Hello everyone, my name is Aline Bsaibes. I'm Lebanese by origin, but I live in France. I've been here for more than 20 years developing agri-tech. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I was born and raised under the bombs in Lebanon, so that made me very resilient, a resilient person. And always think about how to rebuild and not complain about what's not working. When I had to decide where to go to university and what I want to do, my motto was, I don't want to be in front of a PC all my life, in a room, in an office. I want to be in the field, and that's why I have chosen agriculture. So I'm an engineer in agriculture. I spent a lot of time in the field. I have a master's degree in irrigation and soil sciences. And then I came back very quickly to PCs because I was making mathematical models for agriculture. So it regrouped with what I didn't really wanted to do at the beginning, but I was still connected to the field. My first job was to help Lebanese farmers get out of illicit crop production, because during the war there was a lot of landlords who cultivated illicit crops, and I was in USAID program to help those farmers have change from those crops to maize, to corn, to silage corn, and dairy cows. So that wasn't easy because I was a woman in front of those illicit crops farmers who were used to deal with dealers. So that wasn't an easy job, and I had to convince them to work 7 times more to earn 7 times less. That wasn't an easy task to do, but that was really a great experience. I was also at the same time a TV show presenter, on crops. So that was my way of presenting every day 10 minutes how to take care of indoor and garden plants and cultivate crops around the house. So that I did this for a whole year. That was a very, very interesting experience for me. But then I really wanted to go back to science. That was what I wanted to do, and came to France to do a PhD in applied mathematics to agriculture. Why? It's because I found out that there are a lot of knowledge that we have in science that is not put in the hands of farmers. And that would be really interesting to see how this science, how math can be put in the hand of farmers to give them insight, simple insights, even if the models can be complex, how to give them simple insights on when to plant, when to irrigate, when to fertilize, because I found out when I was doing it myself, that wasn't really easy to take those decisions. So I came to France, I did my PhD, and I have also worked in research in integrating satellite images in those models, to see how satellite imagery can help give more information that we don't have on the field, because input data is always lacking on the field. So how to compensate it? I worked in research for that, and then I said research is not really for me. I want to go to a real company that provides real tools that we can put in hands of growers and farmers. And that's where I joined ITK in 2009. As a modeler, as a crop modeler, so a mathematician that models how plants grow. And I did all the jobs in ITK. It's been 12 years that I'm in the company. I was a developer, then a project manager, then a business developer, and today I'm the CEO of the company. I have the chance to have this challenge today because I'm a deep believer that agriculture has a big gap between what it can potentially do and what's doing today in terms of environment, in terms of production, in terms of also giving good insights to farmers so that they take decisions easily. So I'm deeply engaged in agri-tech. I'm deeply engaged in ITK, the company I lead today. And I'm really happy today to be talking to you about this company. So ITK is, we are 120 people today. Most of us are PhDs in crop modeling and animal behavior modeling, because we work in two verticals, crops and animals. Let me focus first on crops. To make it really simple, we give simple tools that you have on your phone or your PC that helps you decide what variety to plant, when to plant, if it's a rain-fed irrigation, when it's the best time to fertilize to make the best out of the rainfall that will fall. If you are an irrigator, when, how much, and how to irrigate. When is your plant vulnerable to disease? So when is the best time to treat? We had really an objective to reduce treatments, and we found out that in some years we could decrease treatments by more than 40%, because people just treat because they have the habit to do so and they don't want to take risk. But if you follow science, let's say it like this, put behind simple tools, you can really decrease the number of treatments that you do to your crops. We also estimate yield and give you an insight of what's the yield that you will have and when is the best date to harvest your crop. It might seem a little bit complex when you say, okay, how do they do it? It's only on cloud, how is it possible? Actually, we only need weather data forecast, historical and forecast. We need to know what's the type of your soil, and we need to know what crop you are planting. And with that, we can simulate how the plant is growing. If you're doing practices on your crops, irrigation, fertilization is good for us to know them. If we don't have this information, we compensate it by satellite imagery that give us insight on what's happening on your field. So it might seem a little bit complex, but in fact, science has a lot of advance in this field, and what we're doing is only putting it behind simple tools that are provided to farmers. So that's for crops. Our activity on animals is a little bit different. So we provide sensors that we put around the neck of dairy cows that measures real-time the movement of their head. This movement gives us, with algorithms behind it, insight on when is the best time for reproduction for this cow. Is it feeding well? What is the time of rumination, of ingestion? Does it have problems of mastitis, for example? Does it have any health issue? Is the cow calving? So we decrease the mortality at calving because we alert very complex calving processes to help the cow deliver. So we have also, this same sensor allows us to know if the cow is comfortable and therefore giving the right milk production. And we have recently gone into insurance. So how you say, okay, how is it possible to go from tools for farmers to insurance? Actually, we found out that this is a good complement to all our tools, because the farmer wants to take a decision, is afraid of sometimes changing his habits according to what our tools are telling him to do. So we offer him a guarantee. If he takes the decision that we are recommending, he's guaranteed on his output. So if he doesn't have the output that the tool is telling him that he will have with the decision that he has to put in place, then he has a compensation. And we found out that this is a way also to push our tools with to farmers and for them to be more confident to use them. So that's ITK in few words. We are also today answering a very big, actually, question that farmers for us today all over the world have a lot of pressure because the consumer wants now to consume very healthy food, environmentally friendly, that has emitted the minimum greenhouse gases. The farmer himself has to increase his yield so that he can live out of it. So the farmer has to decide every day, okay, so I have to take a decision on my field that is environmentally friendly, that sequesters carbon in the soil, that increase my yield, that covers my crop from any climatic hazard, and he doesn't have all the capacity in his head. No one has it to take all those information at a time and all the impact that they will have in the coming months and take a decision today, giving all this information. So actually, we think that AgTech in general, not only our tools at ITK, but in general, AgTech can put together all those insights and make an artificial intelligence tool that help the farmer at the end take all those information at a time and take his decision, the decision that's less risky for him and less risky for the environment, and reduce and mitigate his risk. So for us, it's really that's what AgTech answers today, because farmers already have their habits, already know how to irrigate, fertilize, but they have so much thing to do to think at the same time, and there is also the consumer pressure on the product that is the healthiest possible. So I really think that that's the main issue that we are solving as AgTech in general. Okay, so if I come back to agriculture and women in agriculture, so I have read recently that more of 60% of world production in agriculture is done by women. And if we have in mind that all those women are producing our food, giving them the right insights and education to make sure that this food is healthy for the environment and for consumers, that's a big deal. So women are actually our first clients, are the first users of our tool. So when we talk about geographies, of course, the impact of women in agriculture is not the same. It's true, but if we take the world as a whole, I was surprised to see that more than 60% of crop production of food is produced by women. So for me, education is number one, and education in agriculture and giving all the insights for those women farmers, women growers to produce better. We're talking about improving 60% of our food quality production in the world. So it's not nothing. And it's important that those services in AgTech in general be very simple to use. We don't have to have PhDs to use them. They have to be really straightforward. Green, red, do it, not do it, put that much, don't put that much tomorrow, and that's it. It has really to be really simple. So I can perhaps talk now about one specific tool that we have, which is called CropWin. This is a tool that's really that gives insight for growers and their consultants for corn, silage and grain corn, for wheat, for barley, for soybeans, giving insights on when to plant, when to irrigate, how much, when to fertilize. What's important about fertilization is that, yes, sometimes if you want to add nitrogen, you know that you will increase yield, but perhaps it will cost you more money to buy this nitrogen and add it to the field than the return on investment that you will have at the end of the year of increasing your yield by 5%. So the tool also gives you insight. Is it worth it to add nitrogen tomorrow or next week, given that it will only increase your yield by a little and it will cost you much more? So it's really different from only agronomic tools. It also has this economic aspect that's important in taking the decision. So extensions of this tool allows you also to say, okay, how much carbon am I sequestrating in my soil? So It's a big deal today. Everyone is talking about carbon. Perhaps tomorrow we will be able to monetize this carbon. It's not yet the case. But it's important to keep in mind that the soil health, the soil regeneration is a real important issue in keeping agriculture production with time. So it's really important to know in the practices that we're doing in our soil, yes, it's increasing my yield, but am I taking good care of my soil? Am I regenerating my soils? Do I have sustainable soils to be productive at the long run? So it also takes into account this, this carbon issue. Other extensions of the tool allows you to decide for special crops, is it time to treat? So is there any disease risk pressure that's telling you, hey, it's really good that you spray next week because there's a disease pressure that's coming and it's good to have a prevention. So it's important to know that depending on your use, you can add on irrigation, fertilization, and if you want carbon and if you want also treatment. So that's about CropWin. It's a simple tool. It's connected to automatic weather. It has, it's connected also to a soil database, but if you know better than us the characteristics of your soil, you can add this information. It's also connected to satellite imagery, and it works on the cloud. So it's really a simple tool that works that works really simply on your smartphone and on your PC. We are not only focused on row crops, we are also focused on specialty crops like trees, fruit trees, and vineyard, especially vineyard and almond trees. So we have the same tool, but it's really specific on vine. We know that wine quality is depending on how the water status during the season for your vine has been along the season. So if you have too much water, you'll have a high yield, but you will have big fruits with a lot of water and not a lot of sugar. So you'll not produce the same wine, or it won't have the same taste if you are eating stable grapes. It will not have the same sugar concentration as crops as vineyards that will have some stress at some point in time in the season. So when you stress the vine between flowering and veraison is something that can help concentrate more sugar in the fruit. You will have less yield, but you will have better quality of grapes, either for table grapes or for wine. But it's more true for wine because the quality of wine is not the same as of sugar concentration in crops. So we help, the tool that we have helps their growers, winemakers, decide when to irrigate their vine, how to stress their vine at the right time to produce the right grape for the right wine or for the right table grape. That's the same tool exists for almond, the same tool exists for apple trees, and soon you will have also other fruit trees, but those are three crops that we focus on. So that's mainly our tools. That's mainly ITK. That's mainly our vision. And if you have any question, I'll be happy to answer them.
Superb, Aline. It was a pleasure hearing a passionate talk about both women in agriculture. At the same time, also the great work you are doing, like, both are very important and relevant. We do have some questions for you. So the first question is that when we talk about all these technologies, whether artificial intelligence, machine learning, they all are based on the key factor of collection of data. Now, the collection of data has always been, digitization of farmer information has always been the holy grail, because while we do talk about satellite-based technologies and sensors and all that, but when we talk about small and marginal farmers, those costs can be very prohibitive. So I would like to understand more from you that what challenges, or in case you have faced any challenges in collection of the farmer data on ground, and also please guide us about what countries you are working currently in. So that will also give us some context.
Yes. So Data is the biggest challenge, right? And we say garbage in, garbage out. So if we give wrong data to the model, even if it's the greatest model in the world, it will give you wrong estimates. So it's really the most the most critical part of our AgTech and our services. So as I said at one point in my talk, that's why we want to rely on satellite imagery and working on it. So we are CropWin. I've been talking about CropWin. We have launched it in Kenya. In Kenya, we have very small fields. We have a lot of farmers having very small lands. And we also have combined crops. At some time, you don't have one crop at a time. And actually, we have compensated a lot of lack of information by satellite imagery information. So here I'm not talking about only about NDVI. So only, let's say, the typical vegetation index we're talking about. Actually, we work with Airbus Defence and Space that put together a lot of sources of satellite imagery information and give additional insight on the crop vegetation type and on the crop level of growth. So even if sometimes we don't have information coming from the field, whenever we have an image at one point in time, we deduce implicitly what was done before and compensate for this lack of information because I have information coming from satellite, from above. Okay, and let's say that's the most that's a ground truth thing, because at the end of the day, what imports us is at what level my crop is today and what decisions should I take in the next few days for the future. So when an image comes and give you what's happening today, even if you lack some information, it compensates for it. It doesn't compensate for all. For example, it doesn't compensate for availability of some minerals in the soil, but we can deduce it actually in our models. So there are ways to deduce it. We, of course, lose precision when we don't have very precise information, but sometimes this information is precise enough to give the good insight. And that's what we're doing today in Kenya, all over a whole county for different types of crops.
And which other countries you are already present, so that will give us some context other than Kenya?
So we have really, our biggest development is in the US and Europe. So that's mainly the ground where we play in. But we are really pushing our tools to adapt to other types of cropping, because in Europe and the US, it's really extensive, large fields. And we have really worked a lot on adapting our tools to small fields and to small farmers. And we have a footprint today in Africa. So I talked about Kenya, we have Senegal and Morocco. So that are the main three countries in Africa where we are pushing our service and adapting it to practices in those small holders, small farmers. We are also working in Latin America and Brazil for soybean production, but once again in Brazil we are talking about large fields and big productions.
Super. So that brings me to a second question, like, continuing on what you have just said. Europe and America, and predominantly even when we say Brazil, the way the farming is done is very different than the other markets you are trying to target, which is typically Africa and other part of Latin America. I would like to understand more from you that because I work very closely with African Union, a lot of state heads across small countries in Africa. The challenge is the typical economics for putting up technology in hands of farmer there. Do you see those challenges also coming, because they are typically sustenance farmers, they themselves cannot pay, right? And they depend a large on development funding or the state or support from other non-governmental organization. Do you see that the business model also changing when you go to these type of markets?
All African countries are not the same. So when we talk about Morocco, for example, we have a groupment, groups of farmers that pay, so that it's not individual farmers, but transformation, retail that pays for the farmer. When we go to Kenya, it's the government which is paying. It's actually the county itself that wants from one side to control the input they are giving to farmers, because they are giving them the grains, that they are giving them the fertilizers and the treatments, and they want to control where is this going and how is it used, and are they giving them to the right people at the right time to produce better. So they are actually financing the use of those services by farmers, and they are conditioning the use of those tools so that they give the grains and give the fertilizers to the growers. So it's financed by the government itself, not by farmers. And we are engaging local companies in the service. So local companies are training farmers to use those tools. So it's not just us in France sending a connection and then do with it. We have local antennas and local companies, Kenyan companies, that we have trained, and they are now training the growers themselves to use this service very, very simply. But the financial part is still today subsidized by governments in such countries, and we're not asking farmers to pay for themselves.
Perfect, very well articulated and answered, because I believe that is the way forward. Because if you see the country I live in, that's India, right? We are having the number of farmers which is equivalent to whole of Africa. So, but there are challenges of business model. There are challenges of digitization of the farmer, and luckily we are taking right steps. And it was honor to have you. And I look forward if ITK can come down to India. And we are having close to 130 million farmers who are growing the food which is equivalent in the price or the value terms to whole of Africa. So thanks a lot, Aline. It was pleasure having you, and look forward to have more such interaction. And I'm pretty sure that our audience, who happens to be those who support women in agriculture, would have got insightful session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you a lot, Deepak. That was a pleasure.